with a grateful heart, give thanks to the Holy One.
Genesis 47. After this, Joseph went to inform Pharaoh. "My father and brothers have come here from Canaan," he said, "and they've come with their flocks, herds, and everything else they have. I settled them in the Goshen territory." He brought along 5 of his brothers to present before Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked his brothers, "What are your occupations?" "Your servants are shepherds," they replied, "both we and our ancestors. We've come to live for a while in this region, since there is no pasture back in Canaan for your servants' flocks. May your servants please live in the Goshen territory." Then Pharaoh replied to Joseph, "Now that your father and your brothers have come to you, Egypt is at your disposal, so settle your father and brothers in the best part of the land. Let them live in the Goshen territory. If you learn that any of them are especially skilled, put them in charge of my livestock." Later, Joseph brought his father Jacob to Pharaoh and introduced him. Jacob blessed Pharaoh. "How old are you?" Pharaoh asked Jacob. "I'm 130 years old," Jacob replied. "My years have turned out to be few and unpleasant, but I haven't yet reached the age my ancestors did during their travels on earth." Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and then left the throne room. Joseph settled his father and brothers, assigning them their own land in the best part of Egypt, in the territory of Ramses, just as Pharaoh had ordered. Joseph provided food for his father, his brothers, and all of his father's household, proportionate to the number of young children. Meanwhile, there continued to be no food throughout the land, because the famine remained very severe. As a result, both Egypt and Canaan languished under the effects of the famine. So Joseph kept on accumulating all the money that was to be found throughout Egypt and Canaan in exchange for the grain that was being purchased. He stored the money in Pharaoh's palace. After all the money had been spent throughout Egypt and Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and demanded, "Give us food. Why should we die right in front of you? Our money is spent. You can surrender your livestock," Joseph replied. "I'll feed them in exchange, since your money is gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph traded food in exchange for horses, various flocks and herds, and donkeys. He fed them with food in exchange for their livestock during that year. The following year, they came to him and reminded him, "We won't hide from you, Your Excellency, that we've spent all of our money, and that our livestock all belong to you. There's nothing left to trade with you, Your Excellency, except our bodies and our territories. So why should we and our land die right in front of you? Buy us and our land in exchange for food, and we and our land will be slaves to Pharaoh. Give us seed, so we can survive and not die, and so the land won't stay desolate." So Joseph purchased all of the Egyptian territory for Pharaoh. Every Egyptian sold his field, because the famine's effect was so severe. That's how Pharaoh came to own the land. Then Joseph transported the people to cities from one end of Egypt to the other. However, he did not purchase land belonging to the priests, because the priests held an allotment, previously provided to them by Pharaoh, from which they live. That's why they did not sell their land. After this, Joseph addressed the people. "Pay attention," he said. "I bought you and your land for Pharaoh today, in exchange for seed for you. Now go sow the land. When harvest season arrives, you are to provide a fifth of the harvest to Pharaoh. The remaining 4/5 are to be for your use, for seed, and to feed you, your households, and your little ones." "You've saved our lives," they replied. "If it pleases you, Your Excellency, we'll be Pharaoh's slaves." So Joseph crafted a statute concerning Egypt that remains valid to this day, that Pharaoh should own a fifth of the produce, excluding the land belonging to the priests, which remained outside of Pharaoh's control. Israel remained in Egypt's Goshen territory, acquired land there, became prosperous, and his descendants grew very numerous. He lived for 17 more years in Egypt, until he was 147 years old. As the time approached for Israel to die, he called for his son Joseph and addressed him. "Please," he asked, "if you're happy with me, make a solemn promise that you'll treat me fairly and kindly by not burying me in Egypt. Instead, when I've died, as my ancestors have, you are to carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their tomb." "I'll do what you've asked," Joseph replied. "Promise me," Israel insisted. So Joseph promised. Then Israel collapsed on his bed.
Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One.
Genesis 48. Some time later, somebody informed Joseph, "Your father is ill." So he took his 2 sons Manasseh and Ephraim with him to visit Jacob. As soon as Jacob was informed, "Look, your son Joseph has come to visit you," Israel rallied his strength and sat up in bed. Jacob reminded Joseph, "God Almighty revealed himself to me at Luz in Canaan and blessed me. He told me, 'Pay attention. I'm going to make you fruitful and numerous. I'm going to build you into a vast nation of people, and then I'll give this land to your descendants for an eternal possession.' You have 2 sons who were born to you in Egypt before I came to be with you, whom I now take as my own. Ephraim and Manasseh are mine, just as Reuben and Simeon are. Your descendants are to be reckoned as yours, but are to be referred to among the names of their brothers in their respective inheritances. Now as for me, Rachel died after I arrived in Canaan from Paddan, much to my sorrow. While I was on my journey to Ephrathah, also known as Bethlehem, I buried her there." Just then, Israel saw Joseph's sons and asked, "Who are these?" "These are my sons," Joseph replied. "God gave them to me here in Egypt." "Please bring them close to me," Jacob said, so I can bless them." Now Israel's eyesight had become poor from age. Because he couldn't see well, Joseph brought them close to him, and Israel kissed them both and embraced them. Then he told Joseph, "I never thought I'd see you again, and now God has allowed me to see your children as well." Joseph took them off his knees and then bowed low with his face to the ground. Then he brought them both close to his father, placing Ephraim with his right hand toward Israel's left and Manasseh with his left hand toward Israel's right. But Israel stretched out his right hand, laying it on Ephraim's head, he was the younger son, and laying his left hand on Manasseh's head, even though Manasseh was the firstborn. Then Israel blessed Joseph by saying, "May the God in whose presence my ancestors Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has continued shepherding me my whole life even until today, the angel who has been rescuing me from all sorts of evil, bless these young men. May my name continue to live on within them, including the names of my ancestors Abraham and Isaac, and may they grow into a vast multitude throughout the earth." But Joseph observed that his father had laid his right hand on Ephraim's head. That displeased him, so he grabbed his father's hand and started to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. "No, father, this one is the firstborn. Place your right hand on his head." But his father refused. "I know," he said. "I know. He's going to produce a large nation, and he's going to be very great. However, his younger brother will become even greater than he, and his descendants will become a multitude of nations." That very day, Jacob blessed them with this blessing. "By you Israel will extend this blessing, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." By doing this, he placed Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel told Joseph, "Pay attention. I'm about to die, but God will be with you. He'll bring you back to the land that belongs to your ancestors. I'm assigning you one portion more than your brothers from the land that I confiscated from the control of the Amorites in battle."
Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One.
Genesis 49. After this, Jacob called his sons together and told them, "Assemble yourselves around me so I can tell you all what is going to happen to you in the last days. Gather together and listen, you children of Jacob. Listen to your father Israel. Reuben, you're my firstborn, my strength, and the first fruit of my vitality. You excel in rank and excel in power. But you're as undisciplined as a roaring river, so eventually you won't succeed, because you got in your father's bed, defiled it, and then approached my couch. Simeon and Levi are brothers, their swords are violent weapons. I'll never join their council, I'll never enter their assembly. In their anger they committed murder and lamed cattle just for fun. Their anger is cursed, because it is so fierce, as is their vehemence, because it is so cruel. I will separate them throughout Jacob's territory and disperse them throughout Israel. Your brothers will praise you, Judah. Your hand will be at the throat of your enemies, and your father's children will bow down to you. Judah is a lion cub. My son, you have gone up from the prey. Crouching like a lion, he lies down, like a lioness, who would dare rouse him? The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until the one comes, who owns them both, and to him will belong the allegiance of nations. Binding his donkey to the vine and his mare's foal to its thick tendrils, he will wash his garments in wine and his robe in the juice of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine and his teeth whiter than milk. Zebulun will settle down near the seashore and become a safe haven for shipping, bordering Sidon. Issachar is a strong donkey, resting between sheepfolds. He observed that his resting place was excellent, and that the land was pleasant. He bent down, picked up his burdens, and became a slave at forced labor. Dan will judge his people as one of Israel's tribes. Dan will be a snake on the path, a viper on the road that snaps at the heels of horses, causing their riders to fall off. Lord, I'm waiting for your salvation. Bandits will raid Gad, but Gad will raid them back. Asher's food will be delicious, he will be a provider of delicacies fit for royalty. Naphtali is a free-running deer who produces eloquent literature. Joseph is descended from a fruitful vine planted near springs of water. His branches climb over walls. Even though enemies attacked him, shooting at him and pursuing him viciously, nevertheless his bow remained steady and his arms kept in shape by the strength of Jacob's mighty one, in the name of the shepherd, Israel's rock. By your father's God who helps you, by the Almighty who will keep on blessing you. With blessings from heaven above, with blessings from the deepest ocean, with blessing from the breasts and the womb. Your father's blessings will prove to be stronger than blessings from the eternal mountains or bounties from the everlasting hills. May they come to rest on Joseph's head, may they be set upon the brow of the one who was separated from his own brothers. Benjamin is vicious like a wolf, what he kills in the morning he devours in the evening. That's how Israel blessed these 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father told them when he pronounced his blessing for them, blessing each one with a blessing suitable for them. In his last words, Jacob issued the set of instructions to them all: I'm about to join our ancestors. Bury me alongside my ancestors in the cave in the field that used to belong to Ephron the Hittite. It's the cave in the field near Mamre at Machpelah in the land of Canaan that Abraham bought to serve as a cemetery. It's where Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried, where Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried, and where I buried Leah. Both the field and the cave that's in it were purchased from the Hittites. After concluding this set of instructions to his sons, Jacob tucked his feet up into bed, quit breathing, and was gathered to his ancestors.
Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One.
Genesis 50. Then Joseph embraced his father, cried over him, and kissed him. After this, he issued orders to his physician servants to embalm his father. So they embalmed Israel. It took 40 days to complete the process, the normal period required for embalming. Meanwhile, the Egyptians mourned for him for 70 days. At the conclusion of the mourning period, Joseph addressed Pharaoh's household. "If you're satisfied with me, would you please take this message to Pharaoh for me? Tell him, my father told me, look, I'm about to die. Bury me in my grave that I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. So please let me travel to bury my father. I'll be right back." "Please go," Pharaoh replied. "Bury your father, as he asked you to do." So Joseph got up and went to bury his father, accompanied by all of Pharaoh's servants, all of the elders of Egypt, all of Joseph's household, his brothers, and his father's household. They left behind in the territory of Goshen only their youngest children, their flocks, and their herds. Chariots and horsemen also accompanied Joseph, so there were a lot of people. When they arrived at Atad's threshing floor, which is located beyond the Jordan River, they held a great and mournful memorial service, during which Joseph spent 7 days mourning for his father. As soon as the Canaanites who lived in the land observed the mourning going on at Atad's threshing floor, they commented, "This is a significant time of mourning for the Egyptians." That's why the place, which is located beyond the Jordan River, became known as Abel Mizraim. And so Israel's sons did what he had instructed them to do. They carried him to the territory of Canaan and buried him in the cave in Machpelah field near Mamre that Abraham had purchased as a cemetery from Ephron the Hittite. After he had buried his father, Joseph, and his brothers returned to Egypt, along with everyone who had gone with him to attend the burial. Later, after Joseph's brothers faced the reality of their father's death, they asked themselves, "What happens if Joseph decides to hold a grudge against us? What if he pays us back in full for all the wrong things we did to him?" So they sent this message to Joseph, "Before he died, your father left some instructions. He told us, tell Joseph, please forgive your brother's offenses. I beg you, forgive their sins, because they wronged you. So please forgive the transgression of the servants of your father's God." Joseph wept when they talked to him. So Joseph's brothers went to visit him, fell prostrate in front of him, and declared, "Look, we're your servants." "Don't be afraid," Joseph responded. "Am I sitting in God's place? As far as you're concerned, you were planning evil against me, but God intended it for good, planning to bring about the present result so that many people would be preserved alive. So don't be afraid. I'll take care of you and your little ones." So Joseph kept on comforting them, speaking to the needs of their hearts. Joseph continued to live in Egypt, along with his father's household, until he was 110 years old. Joseph saw the third generation of Ephraim's children, as well as the children who had been born to Manasseh's son Machir, whom he adopted as his own. Later, Joseph told his brothers, "I'm going to die soon, but God will certainly provide for you and bring you up from this land to the land that he promised with an oath to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." So Joseph made all of Israel's other children make this promise, "Because God is certainly going to take care of you, you are to carry my bones up from here." Some time later, Joseph died at the age of 110 years, and he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt.